Trigger warning. Viewing the following content may cause intellectual strain and swelling of logical capacity. If you suffer from perpetual rectal discomfort, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we will be talking about climate change. I'm going to be explaining Gen Z's view on it. I've done some research, I've done some digging, and I have a pretty good idea of how they look at it. I don't share Gen Z's views on this specific subject, nor do I share their views on a lot of other stuff, but I am, I guess, representing Gen Z and I am part of Gen Z. And I have looked into it a bit. And as far as climate change goes, it seems like they are very passionate about it and it's something they really care for. It seems like, preserving the earth and helping the environment is a really big thing for them. And, with that being said, it's a good thing. That sounds like a good thing, but it also can be a bad thing when they care a little too much about it. They might become obsessed with it and might have some other issues. So I'm going to bring up an article here that kind of talks a little bit about the effects or how Gen Z views climate change and just how much it affects them. It says, for Gen Z, climate change is a heavy emotional burden. So, they feel as though that it is a really strong subject and it is an important thing. It is a important thing to them. And the article says, people who have come of age in recent decades, millennials and members of Generation Z, have been exposed to a steady stream of alarming news about climate change and ecological destruction. And growing body of evidence suggests that these worsening problems and the failure to address them are taking an emotional toll. And I think that makes a lot of sense because, why wouldn't it take an emotional toll on them? They've been growing up with this, hearing the bad news and the bad effects of climate change, and with a view that it's a really bad problem, then yes, it absolutely would take an emotion on them. And I believe that the reason why they're so passionate about it is because of the image that they have been given out from the news and the left and the agenda that's been pushed towards them. A lot of large leftist news organizations like CNN or NBC push climate change very often and as a very important thing that is horrible for the environment. And I feel like with Gen Z getting all these images that it is the worst thing ever, it's definitely going to worry them. I have another thing from the Washington Post, and it says, "World is on brink of catastrophic warming," UN climate change report says. And the title right there is obviously scary, but then at the bottom it says, "A dangerous climate threshold is near, but it does not mean we are doomed if we take action, or if swift action is taken," scientists say. So it's the wording they use specifically go after to kind of intimidate people or make people more interested and concerned about it. It says it does not mean we are doomed right there, but at the top it says, world is on brink of catastrophic warming. So I feel like yes, they've been given a somewhat biased view towards the topic, and it's it's kind of disappointing because they look at this like a really important thing, and to them, it absolutely probably is. But because everything that they've been shown is just bad and a really big concern, I feel like their view is a little skewed. I have another site here from NASA, and it says a degree of concern why global temperatures matter. Now, I'm not going to read the whole article. This portion of the article just talks about the sea turtles and how they're being affected from the temperature rising. Again, if you guys would like to look at the articles yourselves, we post them in the description if you want to look at them and you want to see what they have to say. But what this talks about is pretty much it gives us some examples of how climate change affects the world, the actual effects it has and what happens. And all these effects are, crazy and extreme. Now, it's not being said that they're not happening, but there's no way they're happening to these extents because they make it seem like it is the absolutely worst thing ever, and that climate change and the effect it has on the world is horrible. And they talk about food shortages, for example. And I feel like that because of these are the examples that Gen Z has been given that climate change affects the world. They are thinking it's the worst thing ever, and I feel like since they've grown up with that idea that it is so bad and climate change hasn't stopped, then I feel like they've become very nervous and scared about it, and I feel like it could definitely affect their mental health. There's another article that I would like to show from the National Institute of Health, and in the article from the American Psychological Association, they come up and they call this eco anxiety, and it basically is a mental health issue that comes from worry of the environment, and the effects of it are a chronic fear of environmental doom, ranging from mild stress to clinical disorders like depression, anxiety, post traumatic stress disorder, and suicide, and maladaptive coping strategies such as intimate partner violence and substance misuse.
Let me interject there for a moment. Couple things real quick on that subject. One, it makes perfect sense, right? If you grew up your whole life hearing that things are catastrophic and the world's going to end, that you would end up having a much higher likelihood of developing anxiety.
Yeah.
But I think it's tragic and super depressing as an adult, as a person who's of a different generation, to see how this kind of exposure has led to these kinds of symptoms being manifested in people. The idea that somebody is so focused on the climate that they would end up beating their spouse or doing drugs
Yeah.
or thinking about killing themselves or suffering from post traumatic stress disorder
Yeah.
as if they went to some sort of war. I I don't know how to wrap my brain around that.
Oh,
How
yeah.
someone can obsess so deeply on something that hasn't actually manifested yet. And it's sad. It's that's the only thing that I think I can really just say in full is it's just sad. It's so sad.
So yeah, I agree with that because I do believe that yes, it is a concern and it is sad and somewhat tragic to see that because I feel as though first off, nobody is arguing climate change is not happening. I feel like everybody understands that yes, climate change is absolutely a thing and it is absolutely occurring, but I don't think it is occurring at the rates that they make it out to be. And I feel like to develop these kind of disorders and have these kind of effects over something like that is concerning, and I feel like that's the main problem. The real problem is they are looking at this and they're practically crumbling over this because it stresses them out and it scares them that much, and that's the worrying part of it.